back to the Panic Room, everyone, and to the 4th week of Gar-August. WTF. And boy, do we have one today. So, you guys know I've said it in previous videos for Gar-August that I am not as experienced as some of the other hosts here when it comes to reading trashy books. And so I have done some research. I know, shocking. If you've hung around the Panic Room any length of time, you know how shocking that truly is. So I have been looking up, various worst books, terrible books, all of this. And I just so happened to come across one that was called The Worst Book Ever Written. So of course I was like, wow, that's a lofty title. Let me look into this. Now, you guys know I'm a horror lover. I don't read a lot of sci-fi. I enjoy sci-fi for the most part, not so much like Star Trek, Star Wars, things like that. I have nothing against them. It's just not something I gravitate towards. This particular story, I'm so curious to know for my sci-fi people, if you guys know about this, is it huge in the sci-fi community? I want to know. I really do, because I know very little about this genre, and this seems to be almost like a white whale, maybe, or like this huge mystery or something. And I got sucked in. I really did. It reminded me of this one YouTube channel that my boyfriend likes, and it's Wang. And I actually don't mind this one series that he does. He does these internet mysteries. Matter of fact, sometimes he even does books. And so I enjoy this. He kind of does this deep dive into these various internet mysteries. Some of them are gross, some of them are really interesting. And this story, this book, and this whole backstory that goes with it put me in mind of something like what he would do in one of those videos. So you guys are gonna have to excuse me, any kind of language or sci-fi kind of stuff. I don't know a lot about this, so I'm really flying by the seat of my pants here, okay? But this is just too cool. The whole conspiracy behind it, the whole backstory, the mystery, I thought it was really interesting. So without further ado, let's talk about The Eye of Argon. I got a hold of this, it was called the Eye of Argon Scholars ebook edition, and I'm really glad I got this one, because had I just read the story itself, I don't know if I could have done a video on it, because it truly is one of the worst things I've ever read. Now, you guys may or may not know by now that I'm studying to be a proofreader. I'll put a picture here of all my books. I really do love words, and proofreading allows me to really dive into the details and all that. So, this book made me almost break out in hives. That's how terrible this story is. And I'm gonna probably say book throughout this video. It's probably more a short story. I want to say that one of the essays that followed up the actual work itself in this book said that the original manuscript was 22 single-spaced pages, which is a lot, but it's not a book. So if I happen to call it a book, you guys know now what I'm referring to. So I'm gonna give you the best overview I possibly can. So you have this medieval warrior, Gringer, I think his name is, and it's very much he likes his wenches and his liquor and fighting, and yeah, you know the type, you know what I'm getting at. And it's very I would imagine, and I've never read Conan the Barbarian, I would imagine that this is if you took Conan and turned it all the way down to shit. That is what this book is. But you get the visual, the big muscle guy in the loincloth with the sword, Xena warrior princessy type of outfits. That's what I mean. Anyway, so you have that, and somehow he pisses off this king or this leader of some sort, and he gets thrown in a dungeon, and he comes upon this cult, this Argon cult, and they have this statue that has a red emerald in it, and he has to fight them, and it's real bad. It's real bad. And our author of this particular book, when he transcribed it, or when whoever transcribed it into ebook, they kept all of the mistakes, and it legit made me want to break out in hives. Misspellings, and it just, oh my gosh, homophones and bad punctuation, if there was any punctuation. It's just so bad. It's so bad. And there are a few essays to follow this book up. A lot of them say I haven't been able to get through it. So, I did. But it was hard. It was really hard. Like, I kind of had to like look away for a minute because it's physically difficult to read. It really is. But then, and this is the true like cool stuff that I wanted to talk to you guys about. We get into the whole backstory. The author of this Eye of Argon is a man by the name of Jim Thesis. And apparently there was also artwork, which we'll kind of touch on. And you find out, because nobody knew who this person was for the longest time. And so nobody really knew how the manuscript came to be in the public sector. There was a lot of stories flying around. So there's a number of people who write essays that go into this backstory. But there's one in particular that does a really damn fine job of kind of laying out, you know, the track. Very, like, going back to what I said in the beginning, very Wang-like, you know, and how he kind of lays out, like, this info was found, and then this info was found, and so on and so forth. So you find out that apparently there was this fanzine, this like sci-fi fanzine that this story appeared in. And somebody read it and thought it was so funny because it was so bad that she, I guess, copied it and like gave it out to her friends or something. And that's sort of like how it all started. Well, then of course people were like, well, who the hell is this guy? Who is this Jim person? And so they start to try to track him down. And our author, one of the authors of the essays that follow up the work in this particular ebook, you know, he starts doing some legwork. And come to find out, this guy was actually very active with, you know, the whole culture around this fanzine and the whole sci-fi community. And so he tracks down this one guy who ran one of the conventions. And come to find out, like, this Jim guy would go to the convention. The guy was like, yeah, you know, he's super regular. And so you have this man tracking this Jim guy, like, on Reddit forums and all of this, trying to find him. And he finally tracks down this one dude who said he did a radio interview, but he doesn't think it was ever aired. And so he gets in touch with the radio people, and they give him, I guess, like a transcript or something. And you find out that Jim was a 16-year-old boy. And our author talks about how, like, it actually makes sense that he was 16, because if you look at the artwork that accompanied the original manuscript in the fanzine, which was accredited to someone else, and they've never been able to track him down, and there's a whole theory about how it's the same person, and how nobody would ever want to, like, transcribe or try to get artwork out of the dumpster fire that is this story. But they really don't go any further than that down the path of the artwork. But apparently the artwork describes women's anatomy a lot, but it gets some things wrong. And so they think, like, that's probably a 16-year-old boy's mind. That's where our essay goes with that. And, you know, it talks about how, like, you know, yeah, he was really super into all of this. Like, he would go to conventions and, you know, he never tried to hide. Like, he was there. And there's this whole thing about how, like, apparently he was a really good sport about people making fun of his work, The Eye of Argon. Again, I'm not in this world. If you are in the science fiction genre, if you go to conventions or whatever, please let me know. Because he talks about how, like, apparently it's a thing at sci-fi conventions to, like, try to get through this, like, have readings of this story and see how far you can get without, like, tripping over yourself or laughing or whatever. And apparently this Jim guy would go. Like, that's how good of a sport he was about it. And I think the author of one of the essays said that he died early 2000s. He was a young man when he died, and it doesn't say how. But yeah, apparently he's just known as being this really great sport, and they don't know if he ever wrote anything else, but, like, he was super cool about, you know, people doing this with his work and, like, really dragging it through the mud. Really, it ends there, and there's still a lot of, like, unanswered questions because, you know, again, going back to, you know, who transcribed it, you know, like, who did the artwork, all of this. And I mean, some of these people have really done some digging, like going to databases and looking up names and just all this shit. And it's very interesting. It's very, very interesting. I'm giving you guys, you know, a very shortened version of this, but, you know, if you're interested in this, I highly recommend this particular version that I got. I'll try to remember to link that down below, because the essays that follow up the story itself really shed a lot of light on this. At least it did for me. And when I got done with this, I was super excited to sit down because, you know, this is garbage. This is terrible. It's renowned for being bad, but it seems to have such a cult following. But for me, you know, as someone who's not really into science fiction as much, especially not like to the level of going to conventions and stuff, I was super excited to see if any of you had heard of it, you know, Does it have this cult following? You know, is it, you know, this big deal in the science fiction community that, you know, people just love and follow and make fun of or whatever? You know, please comment down below if you know anything about the Eye of Argon. I am really looking forward to seeing what all you guys have to say about it. And guys, thank you for coming back for another Gar Bogus video. Please let me know down below how you are enjoying the event, what you're reading, the whole thing. I want to know it all. And of course, if you like this, please hit like, hit subscribe. It would really help me out. And until next time, bye for now.